Okay, we are live. We're live in two places today. We're recording this live on Instagram as well as for YouTube. So this is a live Q&A. We wanted to do a live Q&A because some of you guys requested for a live Q&A. So we're going to be answering some questions that we have here with us. And if we have time, we'll also check some of the questions coming through the live right now. Right?
Yes, hello everyone. Glad to be with you all again today. Excited for this live Q&A, and I'm excited to share our answers with everyone. So another episode of Lineage Liberating.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna jump into some of the questions we received. And these questions, the ones we're gonna start with, are in connection to the live stream we did last week, which was on the different types of unions. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, because we understand the transmission we did last week was a little bit like very comprehensive, and it created a lot of like questions and wonderings. So we're going to start with those questions, and then we'll trickle down to the new ones that we also received. Yeah, okay. So we're going to start with this one. Should I read for you? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So is it possible to go through karmic, cosmic, monadic, and genetic equal with the same person?
Are you asking me, Joy?
Yeah, for you to start.
It's possible, but it's very, very unlikely. Typically, all those different plateaus of genetic equal, karmic, what was the one, karmic cosmic? Yeah, typically those are different people that are at different levels of initiation for you to go through, gain the wisdom, gain the experience, and ultimately move on to the next stage. But it is possible, but like I said, it's very unlikely. There's always a karmic energy in any relationship that you are in that needs to be cleared, and the level and the density of the karma will determine what that relationship's core essence really is. If it's really genetic equal karma, or if it's more of something that you haven't realized, something you've been procrastinating dealing with, something that you've been struggling to accept about yourself and how you show up to the masculine and how you show up to the feminine. And this particular relationship is challenging that for you. And so, yeah, that's the pattern of why people say they keep attracting the same type of person, same type of partner. They get into a new relationship and it's the same thing, the same problem. They thought they cleared it, they thought they healed it. That's typically a sign that it's definitely a karmic loop, not only from these other people, but something in you that keeps attracting the same thing, right?
Yes, definitely. But what is often quite present in any relationship, whether that's a karmic, cosmic, monadic, and genetic equal, is that there's always karma, karmic energy, miasma, some traumas that needs to be cleared at the level of that relationship, at the level of the connection you have with that partner, right? So the whole purpose of relationship is accelerated clearing, karmic clearing. So you can't avoid that karmic energy. It's always there no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So then the next one is kind of connected to this one as well. Is it possible to have, I guess it's different, is it possible to have multiple karmic soulmates, multiple cosmic partners, multiple genetic equals, multiple karmic partners? Yeah, monadic partners, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just based on our presentation in the live stream last week, we kind of answered that indirectly. It's possible to have more than one for all those except for the genetic equal. The genetic equal is just one person. The other ones, you can have multiple relationships that are based on cosmic history, karmic debt, because you're not originating from the same soul family, the same soul branch. So yes to all of them except for the genetic equal. Definitely the cosmic and the monadic, you can have a lot of different people you're interacting with. Some of them might be brothers, sisters, friends, as well as lovers and relationships or situationships, right?
Yes. So yes, continue with our live Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the question part of your, wherever you're watching, right? And we'll come to that once we complete the ones we have here. So the next question is, are there other kinds of unions in addition to the 4 already discussed here? So for this particular one, I actually asked my higher consciousness, higher solar guardians, this question. I was asked, are there other in addition to the 4? And yes, there are other in addition to the 4, in the sense of who we are as eternal beings. Our history, our cosmic history, is actually much vaster than we are currently mapping it. A lot of the maps that we have here are like the human maps, and they are helpful while we're inside, but there is a whole entire universe outside this universe, and other stories that we are not tapping into yet while we're here. So there may be more relationships that you have formed that go beyond this universe, right? And based on that, that will create a different kind of relationship. But these 4 that we have already spoken about are fundamental in terms of this world, in terms of this realms, that these are the ones that you keep seeing playing in and out. And there is also there are some souls who are entirely new souls who have never formed other relationships, and so they have a different type of experience when they come here. So yes, there could be more in from other different perspectives. Yeah,
Great answer. And my answer was going to be very similar, that yes, there are other relationships, but to me, most of them still will fit into the categories of the 4 that we gave. Right.
Yes. Okay, so the next one is, why does it seem like the work of healing in a relationship seems to be assigned to the female or the feminine energy?
Do you want me to answer
yes.
that first? There are many parts to that question. And I'll just start here. So most women either consciously or unconsciously compromise the moment they get in a relationship. There's an indecisiveness of how I want my man to be spiritual, but not completely dedicated to the spiritual path. I want my man to be able to still be, in tune to the world, 3D, being able to bring home the money, take care of me, taking me out to the movies, and all of that is fine. But I've noticed this pattern to where women that haven't fully opened up and said, I want a spiritual man, I want him 100% dedicated to the spiritual path, I want him to have his emotions completely open and ready to work. There's a difference between a man being open to spirituality, a man being open to hearing something, and being ready and willing to activate and manifest and do. And most times the women that I hear say, why does it feel like the feminine is doing most of the work? It's because they are not, number one, being stern with themselves and really honing in on what they really want versus what they're settling for, saying, oh, he just needs to be open to spirituality. That sounds good until you get into a relationship. And when the dynamic of you wanting to really focus on healing in a relationship, and if that man, honestly, he didn't sign up for that, and you were looking for someone that was just open, so you can't be upset with him when you're trying to do deep healing work and he's not down for it. So I believe the first issue is the initial connection in a relationship of making sure both partners have an understanding what their dedication level to healing is from the very beginning. So, and sometimes it kind of works against women when they say, I just want a man that's open, but then they go into the relationship and then there's certain disturbances like, oh, he didn't do this, he didn't think about this, he doesn't know about his inner child, he doesn't know about a mother wound. But you were just looking for someone who was open. You weren't looking for someone who was knowledgeable, who was serious about the healing work. And I believe part of that is also men who are serious about healing men who are committed to emotional awakening, emotional intelligence, may not always be the most attractive, quote unquote, man to a woman based on the 3D lens of what they're looking for the typical male, in terms of outward appearance, in terms of how he carries himself, in terms of what his patterns are. They might be called a little bit weird to most women because he's devoted to spirituality more than he's devoted on some of the 3D lens things. So the other side of that is for the masculine. Why it's harder is men naturally are programmed in many ways not to be as emotionally available, not to be as emotionally open with their heart. So it's number one, if you're signing a man up in a relationship and he hasn't had the space to open himself up, to be vulnerable, and he's been taught that he has to be the stern man, the tough man, bringing home the money, bringing home the wealth, it's going to take a minute for him to shift, even if he wants to shift, because his mindset has to change. Now, this is why it's important to have a man who's already done that. So when you get with him, it's not anything super new to him. He's not only open, he's already started that process. So once he started that process, it's not a huge shift for him to be more emotionally available, more emotionally aware and tuned with the relationship, to where he realizes healing is important and he doesn't want the woman to be carrying all the weight on her shoulders by herself. Another aspect of this is in culture, women tend to naturally be responsible for spirituality in the house. The woman is the one who typically prays, and the man is the one typically who's not as interested. The exception to that is if a man who was raised in a Christian or a particular religious system, his grandmother or his grandfather instilled with him the respect and reverence for God. So he becomes the leader of the household, taking the children to church, inviting them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's emotionally open to healing. He might just be in the pattern of, I know I go to church every Sunday, we pray, we meditate. And that's not to say that he's not, but the assumption is just because a man has spirituality in his life, he's automatically open to the expansion of spiritual healing, the spiritual evolution of expansion. And that's not always the case.
Yes. I'm going to expand this with the next question because it's related, which is the female energy is tired of holding toxic space. When is this ending? Right. So from spiritual science, particularly the natural laws, there is a law called the law of gender. And this is a law that is for our universe, right? That energy moves or manifests into two main forms of what we call the feminine and the masculine. The female within, it may be within the different bodies, but it's typically only two bodies. It will be a female anatomy or a male anatomy, right? And then it can be obviously variety of that, but it's only two really, right? And there is a functionality that these two energy have. And this is a law across dimension, and it's not just in our world, right? And so what we find with the masculine energy, it's often penetrating, it's the idea, the seed, it's the one that has the thought, right? And then that thought comes into manifestation, into form, into the receiving principle, which is the feminine, right? And they are two parts of the same story, which is the story of union, really, right? And so because of that, the female or the feminine tends to be open to receive, right? To receive and to create and to form. And that's why the feminine collective tends to be naturally more attuned to the spiritual realm, because they're working with receiving sensories, higher sensories from other realms, and they can tap into that even at the level of the anatomy, the physical anatomy that the female body has, or the feminine energy has, right? So that is why they are more attuned to that, while the masculine male body is more attuned to the physical realm, right? And the way that instinct will be more hyper aware to this world, the physical, compared to the women. But it's all part of one story, one seed, one flame, and that's the whole dance. And so just generally understanding it, that the reason why it seems as if the women are going first into healing and doing the healing work, there is a part of it which is part of the law, And then there's also part of it which is connected to cosmic clocks. And cosmic clocks is that it's a cycle, the law of cycles, but there are cycles of nature. There is a period where we have winter and we have summer and we have autumn and so forth, right? The same is true in terms of the collective energy. Our collective energy also follows cycles, a clock that keeps shifting. And so currently in the cosmic clock where we are, the masculine was in and has been in leadership, in command, in bringing ideas of how to continue to cultivate the mind of humanity. And so because of that, this is what we see as the patriarchy. We see where the men are more attuned to bringing their ideas into this world in terms of the physical structures that they have created, right? And even the strength they seem to have with anything to do with the physical, right? And then we see the women playing their role on the other opposite end of the more nurturing aspect of this world and the lives that we're building together as a species, right? And so because of that, the cosmic clock has shifted to where we are now coming out of the masculine leadership and shifting to feminine leadership. And so because of that, there's this whole divine feminine awakening taking place and where the women are going first. And this is all part of cycles that are ancient. They have happened many, many times in this world and other realms as well, right? So it's just a shift that's happening. There will be a time where the men, we have seen that even in the church where it's usually male priests and pastors, right, who are the spiritual leaders. But now there is a shift where the women are going deeper into that process, and there will be eventually a balance. And even when we go at a DNA level, it makes sense why the mother's DNA activates first before the father's, right? So there is part of it which is biological, spiritual, part of the cycles that we are in, the 4 cycles we are in, and so forth, right? So then, of course, we are tired because of the history, and we spoke a lot about this in our first video about why we believe union work is liberation work, right? There is that exhaustion because of the trauma that has happened to the human collective. And these traumas are actually this true source of them are spiritual origins and spiritual phenomena, and they're playing out in human relationships. They're playing out through the men and the women. And so the violence and disharmonies we've seen in relationships, we can move forward in our lives as if they're just like humans just doing this to human beings, when there are impulses and forces beyond humanity that are also facilitating the disharmony we've seen between the 2 genders, right? But it helps to shift to understand that these are about forces, the force happening in the male collective, the masculine collective, and the forces moving through the female and the feminine collectives, and how both of us, we are holding organic, natural, empowering energy that is very supportive to each other, and how we're also holding negative, disempowered, what here you call the toxic energy as well, right? And how these are also playing out. And so the way forward is to recognize this at a bigger story, because if we keep pinpointing like this is what's happening, this is this person's fault, and that conversation needs to be had, of course, but there's also the bigger topic of all topics, what's behind all of it, and how do we navigate and move forward as a union, as a team who recognize that there are forces working within us, and there is history that is playing out, and there is ancestral traumas and inner child traumas and soul traumas that are playing out in us, but in our core, we are beloveds, we are kins, we are friends, and so forth. So what do we need to do to shift from that? But I definitely recognize the exhaustion that the feminine, I mean, talking to a sister here. So when is this ending? It will end when the cosmic clock completes its cycle. And then there will be, this is where the whole golden age is coming from. Even the golden age will have a clock. Eventually, it will also have to end. And we go into other cycles of creation, of existence, of exploration. but it will end. We are at the beginning of an awakening where there is shift and the feminine is reclaiming wherever they have been disempowered, right? And that shift is also reflected in our relationships. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so still on relationships, how do we navigate relationship anxiety, especially in new relationships?
The greater truth is, if you have anxiety at the very beginning of a relationship, that's not a good sign. There's certain levels of anxiety that are going to be there of getting to know someone intimately and building a relationship, building trust, building companionship. And the anxiety, I guess my answer is to tune in to see if this anxiety is coming from with you of just from previous relationships you've been in, and you're concerned about the outcome being the same as previous relationships, or if the anxiety is coming from true concern about being able to get along with that person as your new evolved spiritual self. When you go into a relationship and you've done spiritual growth, emotional healing, and expansion, there's a level of freshness that you're entering in that relationship with, to where it balances out the anxiety, the bumps that you'll have, to where there's a level of surrendering because you're confident with yourself. You're confident with the healing work you've done, the expansion you've done, and you're ready for the challenge that comes with this new relationship, to where you're more open, you're more confident. Even when there's disagreements, there's a way that you navigate with a certain level of sophistication, to where you're equipped with having a disagreement in a calm manner, having things that abruptly take you by surprise that you didn't expect, but it still doesn't shift the ground or the foundation, because you've met a certain level of values with this person. You see eye to eye, you've done your due diligence with previous relationships, previous healing, to where you know exactly what type of person you're looking for, and you're not falling for the taboo patterns that have been making you loop in a certain type of relationship with a certain type of person. As I said, that zestness or that freshness, you're walking into it saying, I'm ready for the challenge, I'm game for it. I know this is not going to be a smooth road all the way through, but I know we see eye to eye with our spiritual endeavors, how serious, how committed we are. We see eye to eye and understanding we have different perceptions, different views, and learning how to come to the center, come to the middle, and work together. That anxiety is dissolved to a degree. So again, like I say, this really tracking to see if the anxiety is coming from doubt of, should I even be in this relationship in the first place with this person? Or if the anxiety is concerned of you not living up to the expectations of the other person, and vice versa. They're not living up to the expectations. But if you have a certain level of coherence and synthesis with this person, to where you know what each of you is expecting, what the ultimate goal is, what the ultimate plan of what you're looking for, why you even engaged in this relationship. It was intentional. It was, I want this type of person. I want this type of life. That anxiety is going to continue to morph and shape shift in different ways of healing and expansion and true surrender in
it. Since we are already talking about anxiety, do you want to go forward with this one on some tips on how to release negative thoughts and anxiety for the future? Yes, and also just worries about thinking negative things into reality.
So for that question, I have a counter question is, where are the negative thoughts coming from? What is the impulse that is vibrating your mind to where you have this negative thought, this negative mindset that can happen? Something can go wrong. Is that coming from a particular trauma or event that happened in your life with a previous relationship? Is this coming from looking at your mother and father and how you were raised as a child, and having this assumption that the man will always leave, that the man will always cheat on you, the woman will always cheat on you? Where are these thoughts of anxiety and nervousness coming from? Are they based on true organic natural impulses? Are they based on some type of thing that is really seeking to be healed? To me, if there's a lot of anxiety, what it's really saying is that person still has some healing to do before they're really prepared to enter into a relationship. There might be a level of more work that needs to be done to where they really feel comfortable and loose enough to enter. And then sometimes that anxiety is dissolved by jumping into a relationship. Some of the hesitation, the overwhelm is dissolved to a degree to where a person can actually see what it's like to be in a relationship versus gassing themselves up of overthinking and having this high level of anxiety and seeing what it's actually like. It's like stepping outside of a box and trying to examine what the world is like inside the box of being in a relationship and freaking out about everyone saying what it is, what it isn't, but you never actually step in the box to have the experience and see what it's like to say that you healed a mother wound, but then be with a partner who's constantly triggering it, and you realize you haven't healed it as much as you thought you did in your own single meditations, and vice versa with men, thinking that they've healed their father wound, but then they're stepping into the relationship with a woman who's contesting the masculine energy and certain things that they've taken as a given from their father. They realized, okay, this isn't the way that this woman wants to be loved or appreciated, and she feels like I'm a tyrant moving in. How can I shift this? I did healing work on myself, but clearly this isn't applicable in a particular real life situation. So to me, the anxiety is usually from overthinking it or not doing enough healing work on yourself to be confident when you step into that relationship to where you know, hey, I'm up for this. We're going to have challenges. We're going to see eye to eye. We won't see eye to eye on some things. And that's just part of the game of being in a relationship. And yeah, to me, it's all about the healing and the excessive thought that comes with, is this my person? Is this the right person? I've met a lot of people that have never actually made the leap to be in a relationship out of the anxiety of fear of something going wrong. I don't want to be made to look like a fool. This person's going to cheat on me. They're going to run away. Are those thoughts coming from that actual person? I think we talked about in the previous transmission on how if someone has a particular energy in their field, they can make the next partner that is not a cheater, that is not someone who diligently will go out to cause harm, morph them into that, because that's what is energetically and karmically in their field in terms of attraction and relationship.
Yes. So when it comes to anxiety, just like a bit of karmic competency to understand why we have anxiety in the first place. Typically, when we have anxiety, the installment of that energy usually starts in our childhood, where in the household itself, there were certain emotionally chaotic experiences that were taking place. And these emotionally chaotic could have been about the parents, or the environment itself was quite chaotic. And so there was always, as a child in that moment, always a certain level of unpredictability of how today is going to be like. Are we still going to experience a chaos? Are they going to fight today? Are we going to have this situation today? And typically the child who tends to have that anxiety is usually emotionally sensitive from a young age. And so they are tapping into these subtle energies that in the family, people think they are just getting dissolved each time the conversation ends, each time the fight ends, right? And so the child learns to cope with this level of uncertainty of how today is going to be by storing that anxiety, the unprocessed emotion in the body. And that unprocessed emotion becomes stuck in the energetic bodies, and it can get triggered anytime during the day. Whenever there's any slight uncertainty about what's going to happen, the anxiety begins to come up. Right? Whenever there's any level of emotional unsafety, emotional chaos that is being triggered, then that stuck emotion begins to get triggered, and you start to shake, you start to move around with that anxiety. But that anxiety is because there is a certain level of fear about the future, about what you think is about to happen or what you think is going to happen. And so because of that, there's this certain level of constantly expecting something chaotic to happen, something unsafe to happen emotionally. Most of the time it's emotionally, but it can begin to morph into where you have negative thoughts of, this is going to happen, I'm going to get killed today, I'm going to have this. So the thoughts begin to form, but we must understand the origin of it. When did the anxiety start? And typically for people who are looking to heal the anxiety, they have to go to the core root memory that started that anxiety. And sometimes there is an actual core event that happened to us when we were young that completely took us out of emotional safety. And ever since then, we've been moving with a certain level of uncertainty and fear of uncertainty, which is why even the anxiety in the relationship, it's playing out because you're looking for a certain level of, this is it, this is the end, this is how things are going to be all the time. Looking for certainty, which is quite difficult to achieve in this realm, because we are constantly changing, things are constantly changing. So that means that the body is dysregulated all the time because it's looking for something it cannot perceive, which is certainty, right? So ways in which to deal with this is not about trying to change and stop thinking negatively. It's about processing the energy that is already stuck, which has been stuck maybe since you're 6 years old or 8 years old, and you go to the root energy, and then you also learn how to navigate the moment when your anxiety comes online, right? And in working with the different types of people, a lot of the healers have anxiety because of different traumas that spiritually gifted people have. One of the main things that has been really powerful and profound for anxiety has been breath work. The reason why breath work works a lot is it's because it allows the person to come into the body, to be present in the body, and to feel what they are feeling, whatever has gotten triggered, right? And instead of running away and pretending it's not happening, you feel it. You allow the thoughts, the images to move through you however way they want to move through you. And at the end, once you have processed them, because you are an empath, the energy, the charge begins to be released from the body. And then you will be able to move forward. I've seen people say, Joy, I literally haven't experienced anxiety in months because I practice my breath work. So one of the tools that I will highly recommend is starting a breath work practice. And a breath work practice is essentially, you can just start by breathing, sitting consciously breathing for 15 minutes. Right? A lot of our karma is stuck because we don't breathe enough, or we don't even know how to breathe properly, especially during emotionally unsafe moments or whenever we are triggered, right? So that is also just a tip to support those who are like, okay, what do I do then, right? Okay, so before we go here, there are some questions I see here about relationships, okay? So what happens in cases where two people's lives almost completely collapse when they meet? Like instances where the relationship exposes shadows, individual and familiar, and triggers awakening.
To me, that's two possibilities based on our previous live stream, that it very well could be a genetic equal relationship, or it could also be a relationship that has a lot of karmic debt. If these people, two individuals, weren't doing a lot of spiritual work before the relationship, and their soul and their spirit has aligned themselves that they need to do a certain amount of clearing this lifetime, that relationship will be very, very healing for both of those individuals in terms of the level of clearing that's happening. So like I said, it's to me a sign that it very possibly could be a genetic equal relationship, because it's bringing things to the light that weren't previously there. That polar magnetism we talked about last week, about how this friction and this energy that is created that collapses everything you think to be true and makes you start from a new beginning. But it could also just be a karmic partner that you cultivated a certain space and energy with in lifetime after lifetime, where you are like a ground crew or a team for each other to help you level up to a greater realization in your spiritual life.
Yes. Yeah, so there is definitely where this could be an organic thing happening, where your energies are creating these collapses and these triggers to come online. And sometimes that's because that's the whole purpose of that relationship, to create an awakening, an accelerated awakening. Right. And then there's also where sometimes there is sabotage energy working through the individuals. It could be one individual or two individuals, where when they come into each other's fields, things begin to collapse as well, right? And it's not organic in that sense. It's other energies working, forces working within that. And that's a conversation to be had, because in this world, unions are not particularly desired. There has been a collapse of union in our world, and where we are trained to almost go into collapse, almost go into just whenever you are in union, like there is that collapse and destruction that takes place, right? And part of that is to collapse the heart, to break the heart, to create more fear and mistrust of union, right? And to recognize that there are forces that can work through us, forces of good and forces of not good that can work through us to create those specific collapse. So you would have to track and really be observant of, is this an organic thing? Is this really our spirits trying to get us to heal certain things? Or is there forces beyond that are also manipulating the situation to create chaos and to break and create disarray in our relationship with each other? And that this awakening that is being triggered is not organic awakening, but a different type of awakening, right? So you have to trace that. Typically, you might find that in almost every relationship, we move between the two, where there may be an organic impulse that's helping us heal. And then there's also forces that are trying to manipulate and create chaos in the relationship. And it's important to learn when that is moving through you, where you're like, oh, I don't think this is us. I don't think this is our spirits. I don't think this is the divine wanting. There is something else pulling the strings here, right? But what matters is that it's not to always just run when this is happening, but to sit and understand what is going on, because if you run, it's going to come back again. Like sometimes we have to complete the karmic energy before, so that we can truly be liberated, right? Yes. Okay. I saw another one here about when a child is born from two genetic equals, would you say those children are more likely to possess greater health or spiritual power?
Yes, very likely. But still, you have to consider that that child is still, they have their own mission, they have their own purpose. It's very similar to how, even from this 3D lens, when a mother and a father bring a child into this world, and the father wants the boy to be a football player, basketball player, wants him to just be like him. But as that boy gets older into a teenage, he intuitively may rebel against his father, saying, I'm not you, I don't want to be like you, I want to have my own life. So the same is true with a genetic equal. You can bring a child in here that may have a completely different mission, completely different purpose from what you expect them. They may not even be interested in spirituality the way that you are, because their mission is for something else. So there's a truth to that, but it's also making sure that you don't distort it in a way that where you project what your life is to them, where you allow them to actually explore and figure it out for themselves, to have the human experience for themselves based on their soul mission, their soul alignment. This also goes into the sexual alchemy that I speak of how children manifest down here, the intent between those two couples as genetic equal or as not. Like, what type of energy are you pulling in? Are you tracking that child's soul that you're trying to bring into this field to even know what type of energy you're bringing down here versus having the human misconception of this is my son and they're destined to be a spiritual healer just like me.
So the thing about genetic equal is that the purpose of that typically is to accelerate the healing of our DNA templates. And the DNA template that we currently hold is what people call fallen DNA, right, that experience the fall. So when you are in a genetic equal relationship, the purpose is to heal those DNA templates, and that creates a certain level of frequency. And if we go even deeper to the mechanics of it, the field that you generate as a union is a bit different, especially if there is conscious cultivation, there's sexual alchemy, there is healing, ancestral healing, soul healing that is taking place in that relationship, right? And you are not allowing the karmic energy to pull you into the greater shadow and so forth, right? So if you do the work in that, in ancient times, even the rites of conception, right, they were typically for genetic equals. The whole concept of immaculate conception comes connected to that idea of genetic equal, as in, like, if the DNA is healed, if the DNA is transmuted, it's no longer fallen DNA, it's angelic DNA. So the child that will come through that field will come with a different DNA that is different from that parent, will come with angelic DNA, not fallen DNA. And so because of that, that spiritual wealth, that spiritual birthright will be different from maybe the average child whose parents have not healed their DNA templates. And so the spiritual wealth will be there available for them. That spiritual birthright, what you call the greater health and greater power, will be in them, innate in them, right? But also the soul that is coming through, if there is an actual, deliberate, intentional, ceremonial process of conception done, so that you are aligning with the right spirit, the right soul, so that that birthright can manifest in them, that wealth can manifest in them as well. So that is, yes, that is an ancient rite, a Venusian rite of the priestesses of Lemuria and Atlantis that they used to do with genetic equals. And that was part of why the whole concept of, like, no marriage, no sex before marriage, that's where it was coming from. There was deeper rites that were done in those relationships, in those unions, that could create and bring in a child who has exalted DNA templates. Yeah, hope that makes sense. Okay, so 2 more questions here. Okay, so how do you know what type of spiritual gift you have? How do you know what kind, what type of spiritual gifts you have, love?
How do you know what type of spiritual gifts you have?
Yes, as a person.
From the lens of just what many call psychic gifts, whatever senses you have in the physical, you can also have in the spiritual. What is it? Clairvoyance? Clairsenses. So starting there is a good starting point to see which senses of yours in the spiritual realm you're more gifted. Do you have lots of vision? Healing work. Are you smelling different smells like roses when you meditate? Are you smelling flowers and fruit? Are you hearing voices of the ancestors, of different beings, deities? Are you feeling emotions of people, overly emotional, out of nowhere? Like, that's things you can tune into to begin to understand what your spiritual gifts are. Ultimately, all these different spiritual gifts still lead up to, as an oracle, using the gift of prophecy, and even as a prophet and priest in many ways, of being able to help others heal and get clarity on your mission and someone else's mission and their purpose in this life, as you use those different psychic senses that you're gifted with, are more inclined with, to be a tool, a medium for healing for yourself and for others.
Yes. Ooh, there's a little bit of wind here. But yes, so it is about observing the self and just the natural senses you have beyond the physical, as Weff has already said. And then if you seriously really truly want to know your gifts, gotta be honest with you, you're gonna have to invest in professional support, expertise that can help you map that, right? If you are like, I'm not able to track them myself. I say this because to know your gift, for me as someone who does that for people where I map people's gifts, it's actually not always easy to know. And sometimes someone comes and tells you, oh, you have the ability to do this because that's their job. It's their job to map, but it's not just my job. For example, it's a gift someone else has to help you map those gifts, right? So beyond just observing for yourself, and honestly, this hundreds of videos we've done here, you will learn a lot about your gifts and how to map them and how to understand them. Like in our YouTube channel, you should be able to see that. But if you're just like, I really want to go deeper, you should book a cosmic map session that will allow you to do that. And then even those who have those maps, what I can tell you, especially for me as an initiator, is that when I work with oracles, emerging oracles, even for them and for me, we keep discovering new dimensions of that gift that can only be known and seen through practice, not through just us observing. You have to cultivate some of these gifts for them to awaken, right? And even just as someone who's been working with my gifts for a long period of time, as time goes on, there's this growth and expansion that's naturally just taking place, and that new gifts also are being unearthed, being cultivated, and so forth, right? So that will be one of the ways to know, right? Investing in support so that you can get what is it, second opinion.
Yes, I absolutely agree. It's different thinking you know what your gifts are and getting a second person's perspective that's outside of you. Your internal kingdom, our internal kingdom sometimes confuses us and what we think we're gifted in based on our own life, how we were raised, and to have someone else on the outside looking in, helping you see things that you wouldn't have otherwise not been able to track or map is very helpful.
Okay. So then the other question is, what is the purpose of channeling?
I think you are more equipped to answer that question, Joy, but channeling is essentially a way to communicate in this realm with beings, spirits, ancestors that are not in this 3D realm, to really communicate, to receive messages of cosmic information, ancestral information. It's like having a spiritual computer that receives emails from the higher and lower realms of updates on what's going on cosmically, spiritually, preparing you for things and being able to move in accordingly based on the information you receive.
Yes, that is the main purpose of channeling, is to bring messages from the other side, the other realms, right? And there is obviously so much more to it as a psychic sense. You know, there are some people who naturally can just channel that information from outside, the messengers, the oracle, the priestesses. And then there is where you have to cultivate that skill that allows you to receive those messages with clarity and so forth, right? The purpose would just be to bring messages that can bring clarity, can bring healing, they can bring new knowledge that we didn't have, new solutions to problems that we have on this planet and so forth, right? But I do have to say, like, it's not something to just do because there is a phenomenon of just saying, I'm going to be channeling the spirit and the spirit without proper protocol of like, who are you channeling? Why are you channeling that, right? The best way to begin if you're interested in learning this art form is an Asian art form. And also people do it all the time. When someone is creating a song, they're channeling that from the divine fields, the divine realms. When someone is writing a book, they're channeling that. So it's not always just about a spiritual person in a specific trance state, right? It's just the way in which we receive divine inspiration, divine creations, right? And we bring them here. So there's ways in which every human being is constantly channeling, right, all the time. And then there is where you use it for accessing higher records, higher level of information, of knowledge, of wisdom, and so forth, right? And if you are interested in that and it feels like it's your calling to cultivate that, that will require certain protocols that you have to observe, because there is a lot of false light out there, right? So we just want to make sure that we are channeling the true organic energies that are aligned with Source God and Christ, the Christ impulse, and the Holy Spirit. Right. Okay, yay. Okay, so one last question. I know that this is in connection to Black Friday. So someone was asking, any discount offers this year for one-on-one sessions, right? So in the times of where I used to school, I've only done Black Friday one time, which was last year, where it was half price for one-on-one sessions. And with that, I think only 2 people used that. So that was like a little bit of a dub for me. But besides that, really, we're not doing Black Friday special because we are fully booked for the rest of the year. So there is no space for any other sessions, even if we were to do the special, right? And also lots of shifts happening here in Waramistu School. Those shifts are, we are moving to focus on oracle initiation and training healers, particularly supporting healers with their work in the world, spiritual entrepreneurship, spiritual business, and spiritual expertise. So developing healers. As you have, if you've been in this community, I've been speaking about that for the last, since 2019, and each time, I kept thinking, oh, I should also provide this for the community, but it has come very clearly now that it's time that we completely focus on the healers. So a lot of our offers will be for the healers. It doesn't mean there won't be one-on-one sessions slots available. It's just that now we don't have a lot of time and energy to operate the way that we used to operate, right? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Yes. Unfortunately, no discount. The work and the energy that we're spending on these sessions is quite intense, and it just is not energetically fair as compensation to have them at all. I've actually been insanely cheap for a long period of time without changing my prices. So yeah, I hope you'll be able to to save up and invest another time.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. I believe whatever we have for the union session right now, the current price is a discount, if we're being honest, right, Joy?
Yeah.
Because as the next year comes in, it will be reflecting the original price that we agreed upon without the discount. So if you're interested in union sessions and you want to pay less, I would recommend booking now before it goes to the regular price of what we agreed on to charge for it. But yes, this price and this shift in Warrior Mystery School is reflecting people who are serious about this work. Both of us doing this, me within Warrior Mystery School, outside of Warrior Mystery School, same with Joy, being part and the owner and founder of Warrior Mystery School, it's very clear to us that people are very laissez-faire about spiritual work, and it's like the second to last thing to invest in terms of priorities. There's a energy that like spirituality is important, but it's not worth me truly investing my money and my energy in and putting it as a priority. And because of that, as Joyce said, we have a tendency to overexert ourselves as people who are being of service, who are having integrity and doing the work, being of service, showing up, offering free tools, free resources, and then still expected to offer discounts and bend over backwards for the people that haven't been able to completely commit. And as Joy says, focusing on the people who are ready to completely commit and want to be a healer, we can do more good helping someone who's going to end up creating a practice for themselves where they heal other people versus overexerting ourselves and stretching ourselves thin for someone that we give this information to, we spend the time with, and they don't take it seriously enough to expand and make it a modality for themselves to be a beacon of light.
Yes. I actually just created a post about the new energy that we're moving into for 2024. And really, we're starting this December. So with this live Q&A, we were wrapping our series on divine union. And starting from next week, we are focusing more on the healers and the needs of the healers and supporting healers and aligning ourselves more with that work, because it's time, right? As Weff has already said, what we are seeing is there is a huge pattern of, as Weff said, a lot of healers who are, let's go, receiving a message as we're talking. Yeah, so there are a lot of healers who are fully equipped to do this work, but our community is not supporting us and is not recognizing the value of healing. And so with that, there needs to be a revolution, a movement for something different. And that starts with our own, as the healers, putting a standard on our work and not just shifting with the culture, with the new craze of Black Friday and cutting your prices. And then actually people don't even book still, even if you cut those prices. Yeah, so for me, after 6 years of this, I'm like, okay, get the message. We're moving forward to actually do the work with those who are ready to commit. And so that's the energy we're moving to. And it's an energy that I hope healers step into as well, where we can be supported, well supported for the work that we do, because ultimately we don't actually need to be doing live streams. We do it because we are committed to our service to the world, right? But we also have to be met halfway as part of the community as well. And that looks like recognizing ways in which you can support your healers. Not us, just everyone really who is your healer. The healers you're watching online, the videos you're watching, for most of these healers, this is their livelihood and this is their art. And this is money they've invested to get to a point where they have that wisdom that they have, right? So we are going to have to hold you as the people seeking support accountable and responsible. If you seek more knowledge, if you seek more wisdom, how much are you willing to invest in it? In the same way you're willing to invest in a new phone, new clothing, whatever you need to have a healthy life. Healers are needed. You need a healer. It's just a standard at this point. Right, so it's just now the question is, what would you do to ensure that you have that support in your life? Yeah, okay. Thank you, everyone. Next week, I'm bringing in predictions for 2024, and this will be primarily for healers. Come join, either way you benefit, but it's mostly for healers. Bye, everyone.
Bye.